Hi there, and welcome to the Diary of a Wayshower, episode 5, I think we're up to today. And this is a special one, really, in that I'm going to go deeper into, shall I say, what occurred for me last year. And this is important, and the day I'm releasing it, it's important. As you know, in episode 1, and if you haven't listened to episode 1, I suggest you go and listen to it to make more sense of what I'm talking about today. In episode 1, I explained my, shall we call it, Anna's horriblest year of 2024, my Saturn return as well, where I had to walk away from my life and everything that I held dear, really, to literally, I was told to save my life, to gain my my new beginning, to take my destined life and not the life that was being trying to be enforced on me as such. And as my history, as a survivor of satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra monarch programming, I have healed myself, deprogrammed myself as well with the protocols that I have from the light councils, from the light technology that I have got access to. Anyway, so today is the 6th of May, and that would have been my 25th wedding anniversary today. And I want to talk about my marriage because it's very important that I put something straight. As I know that you've heard about my husband and that he had been overshadowed and he wasn't retrievable. There is a reason for that. As I started to question his behaviour in 2023 and 2022, which seemed to be getting increasingly out of character and different to the man that I married all those years before, and who I think started dating in 1998. I had a huge and tremendous shock. Now, I apologise in advance if I get upset. I don't think I will too much, but I'm just apologising in advance if I do, because this is still a bit raw for me, as you can imagine, but it has to be spoken about. And my I am presence, my soul wants this to be spoken, wants this to be shared, even though at times I've had the hesitation because I don't want retaliation, to be honest. And I was worried there would be retaliation for talking like this, but I have to speak my truth, and that has what shut me down for so long, that I just have to speak my truth now. I have to speak my authentic truth, and it is my truth, and it is my life. It's my life, what happened to me. Therefore, I'm going to share it, whether there's consequences or not. I'm willing to do that, to share this. So, when I'm going back to the time when my husband realised that he had a problem with his right hip. I can't even remember if it was it was his left hip now. I think it was his right hip, but who knows. And when he went for x-rays, it was determined that he had a crumbling hip and he needed a total hip replacement. And it had come on very fast and very quickly, and he wasn't able to do his job So he had to retire early, and in that retiring early, his company that he'd been with for over 35 years just did the dirty on him, really, and gave him partial capacity, which meant that he could not get his full pension. So he retired like 5 years early from his job, 4 or 5 years. And in that time, we lost, or he lost, a lot of money, probably about 40 to 50,000 pounds in payout. Of course, then a reduced salary each month. There was no choice. He couldn't carry on. He was retired out. They told him he couldn't carry on. He couldn't do the job anymore. So at that time, I was earning pretty good, and from my business and from the things that I did, I was earning pretty good money, and well, I was doing okay. Therefore, I thought we could be buffered. I would hold that and be buffered for that. So everything seemed okay. So he retired, and then waiting for a new hip. Now, the waiting list on the NHS, they were saying, was going to be 18 months, 2 years plus. Well, he couldn't hardly walk. So the decision was made to pay out of his pension money an operation to have it fixed. And we found a place where he could have an operation for about, I don't know, £13,000, something like that. So we decided to pay it because, of course, I didn't want him suffering in pain. And so he went to see the surgeon. It was all agreed, and he would have his operation. Now, the first date in 2022 that came up was the 30th of April, I believe, and it was on an eclipse. And I thought at the time, oh my goodness me. Anyway, that got cancelled due to his high blood pressure. He had a pre-check and he had high blood pressure, so he couldn't have the operation. So it was delayed while he went on blood pressure medication. And then the second operation was due in the May, like the mid-May, and the surgeon got COVID and could not perform the operation on the date that had been booked, which was around, I don't know, 17th of May, 18th of May, something like that. So as that happened, he'd been delayed again, but his blood pressure was coming under control, so that was good. And of course, he was in great pain, so it was a shame. And I was working at the time, very busy. I was about to go, I think, to Ireland on a like a 10-day retreat space with many others. I was co-facilitating it and leading it. Therefore, I was committed to go. It was very important planetary work at the same time that needed to be done. But the time, was ticking away, and I was thinking, how's he going to recover if I'm away, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we get to nearer and sort of May, and we get a new date comes through for the 6th of June. 6/6, okay? Now, bear with me with this, all right? So at the time I thought, oh no, what a gateway date, to go on to get this operation, but that was fine. And my son had moved to America early on in 2022, so he'd gone and got married and emigrated, and so the house was becoming sort of quieter. This was before we moved down to Cornwall, and so this is where it gets a bit weird. I take him for the operation. Oh, we had a wedding anniversary before that in the May, and celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary and his birthday, and that was the last wedding anniversary, really. I'll if you bear with me. And he went in for the operation, and I took him into the private hospital, and Sorry. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Sorry. As I'm talking to you on the podcast, that was the last time I saw him alive. Because on that day of 6/6/2022, he died. And they replaced him with a clone. And I know that sounds incredulous, like, no chance, they couldn't do that. They did. And I wasn't aware of that. I was not aware that he had been swapped. I did not know that my own husband of 20 odd years had died on the 6th of June 2022. And I went to visit him a couple of times in hospital. He stayed in a couple of nights and then he came home. And I was going away on the 15th of June, something like that. And he came home on the 8th. And I managed to get a nursing agency in our local town to come every day. And I paid for that and said to him, can you come and make him a sandwich and a drink? And I had my other son there, so he could help out as well. And can you just help him wash just while he's recovering from a hip operation? And that was all fine. Yes, we can do that. And so I knew he'd be okay and he was safe and all that sort of thing. Now, after that date, I was a busy girl doing stuff, looking after him as well, but he got better really quick, actually, and his walking just improved and all the pain went, right? That's what he said to me, right? What I didn't realise is I was living with a clone. And I mean a clone. It wasn't Roger's body. It wasn't his physical body. His consciousness had been taken and put into the clone. So I had the consciousness of him and he had all the memories of Roger, but he was not Roger. Biologically, he was not Roger. He didn't have a heart. He had no feelings. And I now realise that behaviour that was out of character for him in the coming 2 years was linked to that having no feelings, being like a robot and an automaton, because he was. Oh, I tell you. So that's the background. That's what happened. And so, of course, I continued to live with him, not realising it wasn't my husband. And I just knew that he was a bit cardboard-like, one-dimensional. He seemed to be going backwards, like he started putting the news back on every night at 6 o'clock. Well, Roger, years ago, we came to an agreement that he wouldn't watch the news or media with me. And actually, he started to move away from that. And he even said himself to me, oh, I'm not watching it. It's all miserable stuff. I'm not watching the news anymore. So he was getting better at that as well. So for him to go right back to like watching the news every night, I thought was a bit odd at the time. So there was all those little things, but they wouldn't add up to anything that you would even imagine that terrible. And then I realised that the 6th of June 2022 added to 666. Just think about that for a moment. The 6th of June 2022 adds up to 666. So that was a black magic ceremony and ritual that took place. They had to generate that energy wherever they did it to be able to take his consciousness and bring it back into a clone. Now, this is a terrible part. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know where his body went. I have no idea what happened to him. And I have to say something else to you as well, as that he was in agreement with this. So when I've checked, and I do have access to very high councils of light and to the Akashic, and I've had all this checked out as well. He agreed to being taken. Now, isn't that like, oh my God, what? He agreed to being taken, and there's a reason for it, and a very noble reason for it. Because he, as I mentioned before in the other episode, it was a setup, and that he himself was monarched and SRA'd as a child, and he had no memory. He was in dissociation, and they had already prepared him to meet me so that he could handle and manage me from a very earlier time of life. So we would have a long marriage so that I would trust him. I would trust him implicitly. And I did trust him. I always did trust him. And then they had already programmed him with my trigger words. My trigger words for a program placed into me to suicide. Isn't that terrible? And he already had the key, like, trigger words and song that was to be given to me to suicide me, or for it to trigger my suicide program so that I would commit suicide, so that they don't get the spiritual equity and karma from me dying. Because in spiritual divine law, okay, if I'm a divine sovereign being, which I am, I've claimed that, and that is mine. If they were to kill me, like properly, if you know what I mean, they would be subject to extreme karma and spiritual equity for killing me, and that might actually, like, have a big impact on them. So they, and I'm under the jurisdiction of source, so they had to be very careful. So if you suicide yourself, then they don't get the karma for that because you've taken your own life. So it's your decision. Therefore, that's not breaking divine spiritual law as such, even though technically, with them programming you to do that, in fact, the spiritual equity should go back to the programmers and the persons that put that program in you, and the agenda why they put the program in you, if that makes sense. So he was carrying that knowledge, and his I am presence decided to withdraw, to leave, because in his authenticity as a soul on a higher level, he decided that he was not going to be responsible for that. Not only that, but he couldn't bear to see me die. So, at the hands of him, really, delivering the final blow to me, of delivering what he had to deliver to me to trigger me. And in the other episodes, I explain about the knife incident that happened to me in Cornwall, and where I had heard the trigger song. A trigger song had been played 3 times to me, one after the other, to trigger the suicide program, which no longer is running in me. So he knew what that song was because it was linked to his favourite singer. And his favourite singer, I'd heard all those songs all my life. Isn't it interesting? My voice is going as I'm talking to you, which is like, isn't that interesting that you can hear the croakiness, can't you? Of maybe that subconscious fear coming up because I'm speaking about something that they don't want me to talk about. So it's interesting that my voice is reflecting that right now, which I shall let just go transitory out and through the other way. Thank you. So he had, and he knew what song he had to play over and over again to trigger that response. Now, he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that. We've had confirmation of that. Now, what's so sad right now is that he's not in a good place. On a soul level, he is in a space that he shouldn't be. and he's entrapped and incarcerated, and there's nothing I can do about it. I have checked. If I could do something about it, I would. I can't. I've been told to leave it alone, that it will sort when it's meant to be sorted, it will be sorted. So I have to take the guidance of my I am presence and the counsels of light in regards to that, and leave him where he needs to be at this time. But I do thank him in a way, because he did leave, and already I had suspicions of the clone, so that maybe helped me be okay, if you know what I'm saying. But huge shock. I was at my caravan in Devon, which I've explained about, and I was asking questions. I had left Cornwall. I was there. I always open up the season there in March, get the place aired, warmed up. I normally work there for 3 weeks, just enjoy it really, the sea views, even though it's cold, and sort of just take some time to enjoy the season before it gets busy, and then suddenly there's no peace and quiet there. So I had a good reason to be there at that place, and that was the place then I could work out, what am I dealing with? Why has my husband become overshadowed? As I say, it was only there that I discovered he was a clone. And it became very obvious when we started to go through all of his behaviours, and then I took guidance from the councils of light, and also two people that were very trustworthy, that are very, very powerful seers for the planet, and are their intuitive skills, I trust implicitly, and they both came up with the same thing, which, and also I've been warned in 2022 that there was a possibility that that he might sort of leave during his operation. That came up. It was really, I was warned in 2022 that he might decide to just sort of leave, and I thought die during the operation type thing, where your husband just dies during, what, and that had come up a few times during 2022 before the op. So I sort of had to just ride it and see what that was, and now I realise that warning was a warning that yes, the real one was leaving. So this clone, right? I'll tell you a few things. He, I've no idea if he thinks who he thinks he is, right? But I do know that when it was such a creepy thing, right? Because when I discovered who he really was, and I mentioned just one thing, I mentioned one thing to him that I knew would give him a warning that I might know he's a clone, right? I'm telling you, as soon as I said it to him, he was looking at his phone at the time. He slowly looked up from his phone and stared at me. And all I could see coming out from his face was a demon from his eyes. I knew then he was definitely a clone, because I could see it was demonic. The energy coming out of his eyes were demonic. He gave me a stare as if to say, I'm going to murder you. And I was very frightened at that point. For 1 second, of the fear of looking at a clone who is overshadowed by demons, who he's being run by negative alien agenda, and oh my God. So then I suppose that, and I don't know why I gave him that warning. I think it was, I had to know. Or was I dealing with my husband or a clone? Was I imagining this? Um, was I going crazy? Um, was I totally wrong? I wanted to be wrong. Oh my God, did I want to be wrong? Um, of course. Uh, he came up to visit me a few times while I was at the caravan because he was still in Cornwall. He didn't come with me. He never wanted to do anything with me, actually, and that was a good clue because my the true one always wanted to do things with me. So like there's so much more of this, and you can't pack it into one episode. But you can imagine when I found out that my husband had died, I just howled and probably cried for days in my pajamas. I never even got dressed. Uh, I didn't eat. I couldn't eat. Uh, oh God, it was just awful. You realise you're a widow in 1 second. Uh, yeah, very, very distressing and something I never ever want to live through again. So then you're grieving for a husband that has died and no one knows. And no one would just believe you. Not any sort of normal 3D type person or his family or his friends. They wouldn't believe me. So I'm I'm grieving for a person who's died and no one knows. I can't have a funeral for him. I can't have a service. I can't announce it. Nothing. I'm just grieving for someone who has died and has gone and no one knows he's gone. That was sort of hard too. Um, so this clone, uh, I then start getting downloads of what he's been up to, and they started showing me, and they were showing me that he would spell and incantate all of my drinks that he made for me. So any cups of tea, or he would he'd be spelling them and incantating them to turn into poison. And any water I drank or anything like that, and drinks, and behind my back. And he wouldn't sleep in the same bedroom as me, which was very unusual for my husband, who was very affectionate and would never have wanted that. Never. My true husband would never have wanted that. So he was um, uh, sort of acting out of character for my true one anyway, and that's with the things that actually triggered me asking the questions: what the hell's going on? Uh, and during that time that I lived in Cornwall with the clone, I now realise that I was in danger in many ways. If it's my normal, like when I said that I had to leave because I was told I was in danger, that's why. Because it was a clone. It wasn't my husband. It was something else. It was non human, with no soul sitting in that body. There's no soul in that body whatsoever. It's just a body that's been reproduced to made to look like my husband. And also, I realise now there was a holographic overlay sitting over him, which means sophisticated off-planet tech to make him look more of who my husband was, to overlay across him for others too. And that sort of became immune to me as I woke up to the fact it wasn't him. Suddenly, that holographic overlay wasn't really working for me. So I was able to look at him more closely and look at and think, yeah, you're not him. Yeah, you'd look at him and be convinced he was him. He would display everything. The fact that my husband had arthritic legs, well, he would look like that. And there is an incident where he gave himself away, which was when my car was in for servicing at the garage up the road from our village, and it was a good, I don't know, 5 mile walk. 5 miles, 6 miles, probably, even longer. It might be even a bit longer than that. Uphill, right? And he walked from the village to go and pick the car up. And I caught him because I rang him while he was walking. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm walking to pick the car up because it's ready now." So why don't you just get a taxi, right? And he said, "No, no, no, I can't." I said, "You won't be able to manage that. It'll kill you," right? Because in normal circumstances, walking that far with that condition, he wouldn't have been able to do it. I just know the old my true husband would have not been able to walk that distance. He wouldn't. He would have been in terrible pain. He couldn't have done it. He just could. And this version was walking 6 miles, and at the time it felt very off. Like, how can he do that? I don't get it. How can he do that? And so you see, that was like he gave himself away with that. And also, there was sometimes things going wrong with his body, and I realise now what that meant. So his fingernails turned all purple one day. Looked like there was no blood supply going to the nails, and that's like hypoxia, which you would, with my nursing days, I know the signs. And I was looking at his fingernails and going, "Hey, mate, you've got a problem here. Maybe we need to take you to the doctors, right? Or do you not feel off? Like, that's not normal." And it wasn't normal for his hands. His hands wouldn't look like that. He said, "Oh, no, I've been using hair dye on my hair." And because he used to use like that greying thing, and it's just dyed my fingernails. And he said that twice to me, and I didn't quite believe him. I wasn't quite like, really? And then there was other things about his physical appearance sometimes that looked a bit off, but I couldn't put my finger on why I was spotting that, if you see what I mean. Also in pictures, and I even commented about it before I knew, he always looked a bit shifty in pictures with me. You see, the soul never, pictures never lie. And I actually said it a few times, like, "You look a bit shifty in this, that's weird," because he's never looked like that all the time I've been married to him. When I took a picture or was with him, there was a particular way he would come out, but this time, if you look at the eyes, oh my God, he looks shifty. And I've got those pictures. I've got those pictures of before and afterwards, and there is definitely a change and a shift in the energy of him. And yeah, but of course, he was playing the perfect husband. Everything had to be perfect. On my birthdays, big bunches of flowers, Christmas presents, Mother's Day presents, all like he had to be perfect. Valentine's Day, big bunch of roses. Well, not, to be honest, my true husband didn't always do that. So he was actually a little bit too perfect in that, a little bit too perfect. Also, another thing I noticed with him, which all adds up now, was that he had perfect recall of memories of our life together. Now, my true husband had a terrible memory. It must have been linked to the brain damage of the monarch programming, like me, of having no childhood memories. He had a terrible memory. If you asked him, "Do you remember when we went?" He'd go, not really, or he couldn't tell you a year. He couldn't tell you when it was. 9 times out of 10, he couldn't even remember where we'd been, like we'd been to Portugal or here or that. He wouldn't remember. He was always like that, so it was a standing joke. So actually now, looking back, the conversations I had with the clone, he knew everything. I think I tested him, in the final days before I knew I was leaving, and he came to visit me, which was very nerve-wracking, to be honest. And I had to be the best actress in the world to get through that. That was very nerve-wracking, to be honest. Uh, he, I asked him something, and he had total recall. Of course, because all of the memories of my husband had been downloaded into him. So I think he said something like, "Oh yeah, wasn't that about 19 da da da?" And I thought, no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't know that. He wouldn't know that. He'd be saying, "Oh, I can't remember da da da." But of course, so they were too perfect. They had him too perfect. So it was like only a matter of time before I would be asking more and more questions, of course. So, and the reason they put the clone in my husband's place was they wanted the job done. They wanted to suicide me. Therefore, they had to put one in place. They wouldn't allow him to leave that job or that contract that he was under, which was to manage and handle me for a long period of time and then suicide me or facilitate my suicide. So of course he was reneging on his bargain. He was leaving, and they had to do something to replace that. Otherwise, I would have been a widow, which I much rather would have been, to be honest, and not have that replacement of that bloody thing that was living with me for 2 years nearly. Um, and there are all sorts of connotations with that. But it 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 was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. Literally, my heart splintered into a million pieces when I discovered that he had died on that day in the 2022. And then to cup it all after that, you see, this all fits in. We had a pet cat. Her name was Lola. She was amazing. She was gorgeous. She was so loving. And she'd been with us 14 years from being a young kitten. Well, not a young kitten, but from 9 months old, something like that. And she loved my husband. She adored him. She adored him, and she adored my eldest son. And she'd lost my eldest son, so we knew she was sad, and she could feel that. I could feel that with her. But she adored my husband and just lived to sit on him and everything. And suddenly she started playing up after he came out of hospital, the clone. And she just stopped eating, wasn't interested. We went away, I think, for a few days in the August. We had a pet carer come to look after her and feed her during the day. She said, "I don't think your cat's really very well. There's something up with her, I feel." Well, I'd felt that already, that something was wrong. I thought she was fretting for my eldest son. I now know she knew the clone was there. She felt him. She knew it wasn't my husband, and she was grieving my husband. And I didn't even bloody know. And she literally died. We took her to the vet. Oh, we took her to the vets, and the vet said, "I'm so sorry. She's got a tumour, and it's really big, and it's sitting. It's past. I can do anything about it, to be honest. Do you want to put her down now?" I went, no. She didn't seem in pain. He said, "No, she's not in pain really. She's okay. She's all right at the moment." And so we let her go on for a few weeks, and then like the late August, she really got sick, and I actually had a vet come out to put her down in the house because I didn't want the distress to take her. I didn't want to distress her. And that was very, very sad when she died, and I now know why. I've also got a friend who is an animal healer communicator who had already said to me that she wanted to leave. She could see a man walking away, and she was walking away with him. I thought that meant my son. I thought that meant she just, yeah. She knew. My cat knew. My cat knew she'd lost her best friends. She'd lost my husband, and she lost my son. So, yeah, I lost my beautiful pet cat, who I love to bits. and she went in the end of August 2022. So, you know, it was a busy year that year, really. Lost my husband, lost my cat. I didn't lose my son. He's still here, of course. Of course he is. But you know what I'm saying. He's not a presence in the UK anymore. So it's been really intense. I wanted to reveal this just because it sort of explains and fills some gaps in for why I had to leave so fast and quick. Because it meant that I was in danger with a non-human form, and that anything could have come through that energy. And I was warned that demonic energy would be coming through there. They could put energy weapons through him. They could do anything they wanted through him, but they had to be very careful with my sovereign status. So that's why I just ran, as you would do. Why would you want to live with a non-human entity that looks like your husband but isn't your husband? He's not your husband at all. And that's what gave me the strength, really, to walk away. Because if it had been my husband in his true form, I don't think I could have had the strength to walk away, really, because I loved him. Even though we now know that it was a setup from the very beginning. But I have to give him as much grace as I give myself and all of those that have been through MK Ultra and SRA. He is as much a survivor, or he was a survivor of it, like me. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy to go through what we have been through. And after working with many survivors of MK Ultra and satanic ritual abuse, it's an abomination on this earth. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, and I mean that. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy anywhere. So I have to give him grace for what he's been through, and the fact he didn't want to do it. Like, there's things I've done, I'm sure, under MK Ultra Monarch programming that are not so good. And I've got a few recalls. I've been shown a few things of what they used to use me for, against my will, against my free will. I know I was a remote viewer for the government. I was a remote viewer for high intelligence agencies. I know that because I've been shown that. And I used to train remote viewers because I've got exceptional skills in that area. And that's why I can view things in my sleep quite often. They'll just come to me because I'm being shown what's going on a planetary level. Of course, they lost a big asset. And when you lose an asset, you have to get rid of them. And they can't get rid of me. Yeah, I'm sort of putting my brave big girl pants on today and telling you that's how serious it was. That's how, you know, that's what happened. And that clone is still around. That clone is still around. And all of the people around him, shall I say right now, are being probably puppeted and used. As you can see from their side, they believe they're with the real person. They don't know they're with the clone. They wouldn't even believe me anyway, would they? And also, I do feel some of them are also probably linked to the whole agenda, shall I say. They're linked to the control and handling of me. They are being used and abused by other frequencies and energies, shall I say. All of them being probably had a series of things in 2020, 2021. The antidote to you know what. I'm trying to just avoid certain algorithms with the words. So they can be used, especially if they've had all of the, shall I say, offerings that can overtake people's consciousness and their blood and blood work and all that. So they all can be puppeted and handled and managed themselves. I've had a backlash from them already in the last couple of years, or last year, for leaving because they're not understanding why I was doing it. There was all sorts of black magic going on and overlays and targeting being hit at me at the same time as living with the clone. They were doing black magic spells on my my business, on my ways to earn money. That's all been confirmed. I knew that was going on because my money started to dwindle. I couldn't get the flow. I couldn't get the clients. I did get some, but I couldn't get the flow that I was in 2021, 2022. Because like 2020, 2021, 20, I had loads of flow. I was doing loads of workshops and facilitating stuff, and there's always people, a queue for readings, soul readings, and I just was busy all the time, and it was great. I was loving it, and uh, all of that slowed down to nothing almost, and some of it was maybe because of the energy of what I was in and surrounded with was sort of bringing down my frequency of vibration. That would make sense, wouldn't it? But also, I do know there was black magic spells and energy being encased around me to make me suicide. Almost like to give the cover story for it. If why would she suicide? Well, there'd be reasons, wouldn't there? Because she, her the energy of the MK Ultra and SRA overtook her. She couldn't carry on. The pain was too much. Da da da. Also, she was in financial difficulties. Da da da. And I ended up, I'm not. I'm honest. I took out a loan. I took out some credit cards. I was trying to pay the bills. I was responsible for paying the monthly rent, which was high. He was only earning a third of what he earned before. The money for the pension was being ate into. The clone was spending money like water too, on purpose, I'm sure, on purpose. All setting me up for that, being able to turn around and say, well, she's in financial trouble, she's committed suicide, all that stuff. It was all a setup, as we know. It, that's it, really, So I've spoken a lot there, haven't I? And I've just told you the truth of what happened and why I had to run, why I had to leave. There's no way I could have stayed with that thing. And I call it a thing, I'm sorry, but what else do I call it? It's not my husband. That is not my husband. He may sound like my husband, he may look like my husband, but he's not my husband. He is not my beloved. He's not my husband. He hasn't got my husband's soul. My husband's soul is not there. His heart's not there. And there's so much more I could talk about this because there were so many different things. And this is going on a bit now. I'm up to nearly 50 minutes. So I'm going to be winding this up in a few minutes. But yeah, that's why I had to leave. I had no choice. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? When you discover that information, how do you deal with that? How do you process it? That's been probably a big thing for me, having to process grief of realizing that I've lost my husband. lost my cat, and because she's beloved too. In fact, I left her ashes behind, and that's probably one of the worst things that I wanted her ashes. That's one of the most important things to me. I don't care about the possessions or the money or anything else. It doesn't matter. But I would have liked her ashes, really. God bless her. But there you go. But yeah, that's the story. And I don't care if anybody doesn't believe me. This is my truth. I know what I'm talking about. I now know how they operate. I'm much more savvy now about clones, and they're real. They are real, folks, because I live with one. They are real. Uh, and they are very clever at trying to mimic the human behavior and human feelings, but they don't quite get it right. Then they don't get it right, and there was other things, behaviors now that I realised were out of character, and he was actually the demonic energy in that clone was actually, it's horrible, was doing all sorts of weird stuff, going on the dark web, and if you know what I'm talking about, going on the dark web, and those are things that I did find out, and I knew something was up, like that he wouldn't do that, and so there was lots of horrible behaviour, dark and evil and satanic behaviour going on behind the scenes that I couldn't see, but I was feeling it. My intuition was telling me. And if you think about it, I was living in an energy of that for nearly 2 years and being bombarded with black magic every night during my sleep. My sleep was terrible down there. It was really rough. I'm not surprised with what I was living in and that energy and that atmosphere. No wonder my body was in inflammation. I was 2 stone heavier. I was a bit foggy sometimes with my brain and working out things to do. I was always felt like I was in fear of flight. I'm not surprised because I was in danger. I was in danger and I didn't even know it, but my body was screaming at me that I was. Isn't that interesting? The body always knows. That's such living proof that your body will warn you before anything else is up. Your body will warn you. And they are our inner temples. And it is our soul. Our body is our soul too. And so, I'm really, respectful of that now, of my body and how it needs to relax, and just appreciating my body even more than I've ever done before, really, with what we've had to go through, But hey, onwards and upwards, and I'm just wanted to get this one out there, to sort of like a line in the sand, so I can move on, and now bring lots of amazing new work and talk in my podcast about wonderful positive things, of course. And I am a positive. This is a positive because I'm still here, and I survived it. I'm still here, and I'm here to raise awareness of this is what's going on in the world right now, folks. This is what's going on. This is what we're up against. And we all have to stand up and be counted. The Starseeds, listen to this. We need you. We need you. We need your assistance. We can't do this on our own. We have to, those that stand up and be spoken and counted, we need your assistance. We need your support to be able to do the work. And you do the work because we're needed. We're the boots on the ground here, doing the work that the divine wants us to do to bring all of this to an end. And I feel better for, as I say, talking about it. And it's like a secret you have that you want to tell people, but you're scared of the repercussions. That was what was holding me back. I wasn't ready to talk about it either, really. But now, I cannot let that hold me back. I can't let them control my life. I can't let them shut me down and shut my voice down. And I'm ready to speak. And I am, and I have spoken. And I'm ready to talk about it. And they are not going to control my life. They are not going to control my destiny and my pathway and my message. And no one's going to stop me from doing that work. I'm not going to go through all of that to come to this point to be silent and to disappear into the background, which they'd really like me to do. I refuse to do that. I will not do that. And I'm not putting a difficult slant on this or a bit of a loss, but I'm saying if anything ever happened to me, folks, right, it wouldn't be of my own making. Just saying that, yeah. I'll put that out there. If anything ever happened to me, it would be at the hands of someone like that. It wouldn't be, I'll leave when I'm ready. When I've completed my mission, I've done my work, I'm a happy old lady, hopefully looking at New Earth, living in a New Earth community, sovereign community, and seeing, hopefully, grandchildren and seeing grandchildren grow up. That's when I'll decide to transition and leave this planet, not before. So I'm just putting that out there on public record. And I'm looking forward to that. So, there you go. A bit of a heavy episode. I hope I wasn't too over emotional. It's hard, because this is a day where it would have been my 25th wedding anniversary today. But I needed to speak my truth. And I needed to just share. That's the drama of it, really. And I say that's what I'm trying to deal and heal with, is heal from being widowed, but also being found out that your husband was a setup from the very beginning anyway. But I do believe he loved me, and I think that was proof he loved me, and I got confirmation that he really loved me. And I feel that we've had other lifetimes together, so they've set us up that way. I think we had a lifetime in Egypt together, and I think that's probably where the Egyptian money magic spell energy, or not even the money magic thing, but the Egyptian spell energy enabled them to hook me up with him as such in this lifetime to do that job. So that's why we came together again in this lifetime, and I'm very grateful for whatever he taught me and the lessons I taught him. Probably many, and the lessons he taught me. But I don't want to repeat this. So I have made that quite clear that we will not incarnate together again. We will, whatever source wants for us, but no, that's it. We're done. And, he needs to go and learn as well about loving himself and getting out of contracts. And I think he was in some sort of dark contract to be able to be sort of manipulated in that way, if you know what I mean. I don't know. Who knows? And I'm not judging. I'm trying not to judge. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing me and witnessing me. This is a slightly longer episode than I'd planned. But this is my truth. This is my reality. But I've so much to look forward to. So much to create and share. There's so much help and assistance I can give to others that have been through the same things as me. I deprogrammed myself. I healed myself from this. I have had help. I'm not saying I haven't had some help along the way at certain points when I needed it, of course. but there was always an exchange being taken place with me helping them with planetary work or whatever. So, of course, but I can only now look forwards, not backwards, and it feels like it's a line in the sand. It feels like it's an ending of a chapter in my life that needs to be shut and sort of finished. And I'm glad it's finished. And I hope that hasn't triggered anybody in a negative way listening to me. But I do wish well to my husband in the spirit world. I know at some point he will be released from where he is when everything, the inversions are shut down and whatever. I pray for his soul every day, and I do. I do that. Every day I pray for him. I pray for others too, but I pray for him every day. And there we go. Thank you for listening. I do have now a little account that I've opened that someone messaged me and said, why don't you try this, which was buy me a coffee thing. So, if you could support me anyway with that, I would truly appreciate it as I get back on my feet and build these foundations for this amazing new life I'm creating for myself. So I'm sending you all my love and thank you for listening, and bye for now.